You are now watching the amazing Mets Pregame Show with your hosts, Rob and CP.
Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets!
Hello, Mets fans. Welcome back to the amazing Mets Pregame Show right here on both of our channels. Hopefully, everybody is doing good on this Saturday. Unfortunately, for our New York Mets, they lose 6-4 the first game back after the wild card to the Miami Marlins. And it was a very interesting loss because there was a lot of disappointment yesterday where everybody was excited where baseball was back. The Mets were back. The momentum we were hoping was still there. Unfortunately, Jeff McNeil was the only one that showed up out of all people in this lineup. And we'll get to somebody who, my partner next to me over here, we're going to talk about him for sure. And it's a talking point, especially for me. But we'll get to it in a little bit. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
What's up? How's everyone doing? Last night post game was fun. We had some perspectives on the show. We had Nick on the show, obviously talking about the Mets loss. Obviously, one game after the sort of all-star break, it looked like the Mets started off not energetic whatsoever. And that was my primary concern during our pregame show. If you all tuned into it with Rob and I yesterday, was very fearful the Mets would come out looking sloppy and with no energy. And that's exactly what they did. Now, credit where credit's due. They fought and they clawed back, mainly due to Jeff McNeil. But you know what? We will talk about some of the misfortunes that the Mets couldn't get done last night. They had a lot of opportunities, 1 of 7 with runners in scoring position. That lone hit was the home run, the 2-run home run by Jeff McNeil. So many missed opportunities by the Mets lineup. Sean Manaea wasn't throwing the ball well whatsoever. They were all over Sean Manaea, the Miami Marlins lineup that is. And you know what? I always say this after Mets loss in particular, in a game that really does irk me with all the missed opportunities, is that the beautiful thing about this game is that you get to do it again today. And that's exactly what we'll be talking about eventually, is this game coming up, because the Mets can't look back. They can't make it 2 in a row. They're in the thick of things in the wild card race. And I misspoke last night on the post game because I thought with the Diamondbacks win, they would have overtook the Mets for the third wild card spot, but I believe they are even, and the Mets are a couple slight percentage points ahead, so they maintain that third spot. But it's going to be a back and forth type of standings, leaping all season long, all second half long. So us as Mets fans should get prepared for that. And you know what? I'm excited to be here. It should be a fun conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, so many missed opportunities yesterday, as you said, Chris. 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position. I believe they left 19 men left on base or 15 men left on base. It was a lot. It was a ton of. It seemed like every inning they had opportunities to score some runs. And Sean Manaea didn't have it. I'm not gonna kill him. Coming out of the break, he had a ton of rest. Like a lot of these pitches, their first time out after the All-Star break. Like Severino hasn't pitched in almost 10 days. So he's going to be amped up. You just hope that, Sean Manaea just wasn't locating yesterday. We hope Severino pitching today is going to locate and be the pitcher that we've seen him to be all season. But it's the missed opportunities that were extremely frustrating. I mean, you go up and down the lineup. It was just opportunity after opportunity, and ground ball here, pop up here, swinging at the first pitch after a new reliever comes in like Alvarez. A lot of things like that was May Mets, not the June Mets into early July Mets. And it kind of was a flashback yesterday because it was seemingly when the Mets started to get going on their long hot streak, they were playing the Marlins. And coming out of the break in a wild card spot, momentum was just going like crazy. And then the Marlins we got to face. And we always know we have issues with the Marlins, regardless if they're a good team or a bad team. There's always one team, no matter what fan base you are, knows that's a team that you just have problems with. And the Mets are notoriously bad against the Miami Marlins. And it's frustrating. And look, they got 3 more games against Miami. They still have an opportunity to win a series here. It sucks because as Chris always says, win game one and you can do a lot more during this series. It's a 4-game series. So to win this series, you got to win 3 in a row. Now, can they do it? Absolutely. Not going to be easy at this point because now you got to win 3 in a row. And, a split sucks. But if you come out of this road trip 2-2, or at least this Miami series 2-2, you got the Yankees in the Bronx for 2, and you hope that you can actually either have a split of a road trip or get a game over 500. But that is something that we just have to, or 2 games over 500. But tonight starts with Severino on the mound. I like this lineup minus DJ Stewart. I understand why DJ Stewart's in there. I think he actually faced Munoz the last time we faced him, and I think he had a hit and a couple of walks. So I guess that's the idea, maybe. But maybe it's a trial period for DJ. I don't even know what the hell it is anymore. But in my opinion, guys, yesterday kind of had a lot of bad feelings from Met fans. Right, I saw Chris and Nick in his postgame while I was at work. While I listened to it, actually, it felt like May. Like the way people were talking, people on X, it just left a bad taste in your mouth. And I know we all know it's only 1 game. We were talking in the group chat, Chris, with Hector and Hayden and all that. It was just a game that you just want to forget. You just hope that this team forgets it and worries about today only, Chris.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can't stew on last night, and that's kind of why I wanted to get all my frustrations out in the post game yesterday, because I know coming into this stream, we were going to have a discussion about the missed opportunities from Bader, Alonso, etc. Even JD Martinez had an opportunity to come through with runners in scoring position. He didn't. And he's been kind of, I guess, on a downward swing of things after he kind of rejuvenated this Mets offense during the start of that run there in early June. So, I wanted to get the frustrations out. I wanted to make it very known to everybody in the chat that, yes, I understand it's game 1 of the second half. And I understand that this does not mean in any way that the Mets are going to come, go back to their May ways. But I just saw the process of what I saw in those at-bats were just not good out of the New York Mets. And you hope that sort of funk, right, and that lull, they get out of it once they get into the groove of things, because taking a couple of days off is tough for everybody, right? It's tough for guys that weren't a part of the All-Star festivities like Pete Alonso. So everybody else is trying to get back to game speed. And really over the course of 162, there's a large there's a big aspect of momentum, right? And you talk about momentum all the time. The Mets were on a complete roll. And honestly, we talk about however many games and however many days with no off days in between. That was probably something that was keeping the Mets going. Like, hey, listen, we are a force and we are not going to be stopped, and we don't have to worry about an off day in between here. We are just going to go back out there day after day after day and continue to put in that work. And you see some guys taking maybe a mini vacation, right? Deservingly so. But when you step away from baseball activities, even for a couple of days after you've been playing 17, 18, 19 games in a row, there might be a little bit of a period. Now, I don't want to make any excuses, right? Because the Mets really don't have any excuses at this point. We talked about it in May. They were setting themselves up with about 0 room for error here down the stretch of the season, right? Where as if you won close games in May, a couple of games that they dropped, 1-run, 2-run ball games that they lost late, they could have afforded a game like yesterday. That's what puts the sour taste in my mouth. But listen, I hope everybody had a great All-Star break. Not only the players, right, taking the days off that they definitely need to spend time with their families, rest up, heal up, whatever, but us as fans, right, getting out of it and just taking a deep breath and realizing that everything is going to be okay. So I want to just call out the runners in scoring position, the missed opportunities. Obviously, you have an opportunity last night in the first inning to take control of the ball game by getting in a run with one of the guys, right? And this is where we can start the conversation surrounding Pete Alonso and that bat that he took, where he got sawed off by Edward Cabrera into a double play. That was the perfect opportunity to get your starting pitcher, right, and Sean Manaea, who we don't even know why he was out on the mound over Luis Severino in game 1, but he was. We didn't look too deep into it yesterday in the pregame. I said that he was pitching fantastic to end the first half, and like you said, Rob, they might have been rewarding him for a great end to the first half by making him the first pitcher out there in line for the Mets in this series. That was the perfect opportunity to get Sean Manaea a lead, who didn't have his best stuff clearly, and they failed to do so. The middle of the lineup failed to do so. And it really seemed like that set the momentum of the ball game. I tweeted something out about it. Ethan, I believe, who's in the chat right now, was basically responding to me saying that that is what set the tone in the ball game the rest of the way. Because as soon as the Marlins took that lead, they never looked back. And that's something that I feel like with a veteran hitter like Pete Alonso now is, with a guy that's going to be batting third or fourth consistently in this lineup for the New York Mets, a team that really is going to face an uphill battle to maintain their position in the NL wildcard. You have to come through with at bats like that, especially following the first half that Pete Alonso had, especially with all this deadline talk, all the rumors swirling. You know, the reporters basically saying that the Mets are taking calls on Pete Alonso. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. You got to go out there, block out all that noise. And I really do feel like Pete Alonso is getting in his own head. Now, this is not strictly Pete Alonso just by himself, right? Harrison Bader had a pretty bad execution at bat late in the ballgame in the 8th inning where he couldn't get the tying run home. So I know we're talking about Pete Alonso here because the expectations are skyrocketed and they're sky high for Pete Alonso, especially from someone like yourself, Rob, who continuously expects more out of Pete Alonso than what he's been giving this team. But that's what left a sour taste in my mouth. But at the end of the day, I tweeted out earlier today, you gotta stop looking back, especially if you're a Mets player, and you got to win a ball game tonight because it cannot fall into a pattern of you have, and I know stretches are going to happen. Bad stretches are going to happen. Good stretches are going to happen. But when you set yourself back in May, extended stretches can't happen. And I just don't want to have to repeat ourselves in all the discussions that we had in May. I don't want to have to fall back into that sort of pattern because the Mets were playing good baseball before this All-Star break. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they respond in terms of the mental toughness and the mental fortitude that they need to have to come back out there tonight and win a damn ball game. So, yes, 100%. We can have the conversation surrounding Pete Alonso. It's becoming a concern of mine. I will say, objectively, as someone who defends Pete a lot, and I'm not saying that he had a terrible first half, but it's becoming concerning the types of at-bats that he's taking, especially with runners in scoring position. It is a pattern at this point.
Yeah, and you said a key word during that Pete Alonso rant. It was veteran bat. He's a veteran at this point. You should be better than this, right? You know, everybody has their streaks and their cold streaks and hot streaks, and Pete Alonso hasn't had a hot streak yet all season, and we're on game 97 right now. So, you know, it set the tone yesterday, right out of the gate, hitting into that double play. Like it was just demoralizing to the team. Like we talked about, how many times we talked about it? Every show that I'm on, you're on, everybody's on. If Pete Alonso gets going, you'll see how much better this team can actually be. There's another level there. And the frustrating part is, you said it, Chris, he's in his own head. And he's one of those players when things aren't going right and the mental part of the game is not there and it's messing with him, he's a totally different player. He's a subpar player at best when he's in his head. And not only does he take it to the plate, he takes it onto the field. And that's what's even more concerning because he can mess this whole thing up defensively as well. And I don't know if he's going to get out of this. I want him to, but I just don't know. And I keep on going over in my head. You know, everybody's like, you know, we talked about it the other day. Maybe it's addition by subtraction. What if they trade Pete Alonso for bullpen help and maybe a starter? I know that's crazy to say. But everybody's like, oh, addition by subtraction, right? Well, what has Pete done to help us win this year, right? And it's outside the box, and I'm not trying to piss Met fans off who are ready to come after me. I know you are. I'm just trying to bring it up because, you know, we're talking about, you know, pitching depth that we have in the starting pitching to get better in the bullpen. Well, I'm not saying trade Pete Alonso for a C-level reliever, but what if it's a situation where we can get a really good reliever, like almost a top end reliever for Pete Alonso. Would you do it? Because we can move Vientos over to first base if you really needed to. You could put Iglesias at third base. He's basically a starter at this point. I know that's very outside the box, and people were like, "Oh, Rob, here you go with your trade rumors with Pete Alonso." It's not even about that. It's just the fact that if you're gonna do this addition by subtraction at the trade deadline, why not see what you can get for Pete Alonso from the bullpen? I mean, if one team needs a bat and you need a bullpen arm or two, maybe that's a possibility. I know it's outside the box, Chris, but I wonder if there's something behind the scenes where Pete Alonso knows that he's getting shopped. I wonder if that's another issue as well. The contract, the possibility of being traded, even if how crazy would that be if the Mets are actually buyers and they trade Pete Alonso for pitching help? That would be I know that's kind of hard to say, but why isn't that on the table? Why isn't it talked about enough? Is it just because it's impossible to think that can happen, or nobody wants to believe that it actually can happen as a Mets fan, Chris?
I think that there's just definitely this preconceived notion among the Mets fan base that Pete has been here for quite a while. He's become into one of the premier power hitting guys that the league has seen. And I really think that this fan base collectively, especially the ones that are closely attached to Pete Alonso, maybe even more so than they're attached to just the Mets succeeding by themselves, right? As a team, right? A player over the team, which is crazy to me, but fan how you want to fan. I don't know if it's completely off the table. For me personally, even with what Pete Alonso is doing right now, trading him for a reliever would be very underwhelming in terms of what my expected return would be for Pete Alonso. But you never know what David Stearns is thinking. We all have said time and time again, especially in the offseason, that David Stearns has no attachment to basically any of these guys. And by simple virtue of the trade, Pete Alonso happens to be one of those guys. Emmy's saying it in the chat. I know no one wants to talk about prospects right now. Nobody wants to talk about AA guys because the Mets never bring up anybody outside of Michael Conforto way back when, straight up from AA. And Ryan Clifford is killing it in AA, and you have the opportunity to use Vientos as a flex first baseman and cover your grounds at third base with Iglesias. So I'm agreeing with you in the process and the outlook because it is possible, Rob, 100%. What you just said is possible. Is it likely, and do the Mets care enough about the optics of how bad that would look in the short term? That's a different story. So it's optics versus possibility at this point right now. Yes, Pete Alonso has 19 home runs. He's hitting just short of 240. He's not really that commanding presence in the middle of the order, but why not drop him in the order a little bit? Why not give him a different look at maybe batting sixth, right? Where I was hesitant to do that weeks ago because I really thought he was going to turn it around. And by the way, I still think he will turn it around. I will say that. I don't have any grounds or any basis to support this because he looks lost out there versus breaking ball pitches like El Good is saying in the chat. But I will say, I do have confidence in him to turn it around. I just don't know if he's going to turn it around at that 4 spot when he's batting there consistently. And it seems like the opposing pitchers have no incentive to throw him any strikes with how foolish he looks based off of those breaking pitch swings that he's taking. So absolutely, I agree with you. If the Mets really were desperate for a reliever or two, or maybe a starting pitcher, and they wanted to trade and flip one of the starters that they have now, like we've also been talking about, it's definitely doable to upgrade the pitching category across the board and utilize Pete Alonso in that way. Is that going to happen in this type of year? I still say it's unlikely, but at this point, anything's on the table. And I bet you this front office, that is their same mentality, that anything is on the table at this point. But at bare minimum, if Pete Alonso remains on this team, which I think there's very valid reasons that one can counter argue he should remain on this team, and I'm still wanting to see him remain on the team for the remainder of 2024, even if that means losing out on any potential return and him walking in free agency, I really do think we have to start having conversations starting at dropping him in the lineup and giving him a different look, maybe with some better pitches across the board. I don't know if that's what it's going to take, but you have to start mixing things around. It worked for Lindor. It worked for Brandon Nimmo. It might just work for Alonso.
Yeah, and it's like I don't see why they wouldn't drop him a little bit. Like put Vientos in the cleanup spot, right? He's still been hitting the ball hard, running into a couple of bad luck when he's been hitting the ball hard. But yeah, do it. Put him behind Vientos. You have to do something. Like you can't just do it for Nimmo and Lindor and not do it for Pete Alonso either. Like it's something about and you're right about this with David Stearns. He has no connection. And I don't think he cares about optics. I really don't think so because he came into this offseason, didn't give a damn about optics. Signing Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Bader. People were laughing at these signings. Met fans were laughing at these signings. So he don't care about optics. And I think we a lot of Met fans have this perspective about Pete Alonso that is a lot different from outside entities around baseball. People don't see Pete Alonso as a great player. They don't see him as a star player. They see him as a power guy, and that's it. He is mediocre at best at everything else, maybe average. And that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm talking about what the outside talk around baseball. Because Met fans, the problem with Met fans, a lot of the times they fall in love, which is fine. I understand you love this player, great player, homegrown. I understand that. But we tend to put them on a next level or a pedestal when they don't belong there. Like, I got a couple of messages back on my channel a few times. Why don't you want Pete Alonso here? He's going to hit 500 home runs for your franchise. Why do I care? I care about individual stats once they retire. And we can, talk about the accolades. Him hitting 500 home runs, that's irrelevant if he doesn't do it when it matters the most and help this team win more often than not. Right? How many more home runs are you going to hit when you're up by 10 or up by 5 or down by 5 and you're still losing or winning, but you're not doing it in the biggest moments? That's what I want to see. Because as much as we put Pete Alonso on his pedestal, and look, everybody loves him because he's a nice guy. He's a good guy. He talks well about the organization. But, he keeps on saying it a lot more. Oh, I love New York. I love the city. I love being a New York Met. Yeah, you know why he's saying that a hell of a lot more now? Because he knows who got the biggest bucks, who got the biggest pockets. Steve Cohen might be the one that might say, you know what? I can't have the fan base go crazy. Let me sign Pete Alonso, because he's not getting that on the open market. Unless he has a crazy second half and just goes absolutely insane, he ain't getting the deal that he thought he was going to get, Chris. And it's very frustrating because I don't want to see Pete Alonso just the power guy. Even though I take that at this moment because he's not even doing that. I think he's hitting a home run every 20-something at 25 at bats. Like, that's not going to cut it. Like, that's like one home run maybe every other series. That's just not going to cut it for a guy who is not hitting for average anymore, who is not getting those RBIs that we're used to seeing him, and the majority of his RBIs are balls that hit over the fence, and he's not doing that consistently enough either, which is more concerning because you can struggle and still hit some balls over the wall, Chris. Like Pete Alonso usually does when he struggles. He'll still, hit a mistake and hit it over the wall. He's not even hitting the mistakes over the wall. And that's why I'm concerned. And, 2 years ago, people were talking about, he might break down like an Adam Dunn. You heard that comparison a lot. And I'm not saying that's not fair to Pete Alonso, but you start to think about that because the last 2 seasons or 2.5 going into the end of 2022 into last year and this year, it's kind of a downward trend. Not a lot, but a downward trend. And that's where you do start to wonder, is it just the mental aspect? Is it the pressure? Or is he declining in overall talent. I don't know. That's hard to judge, but you have to start wondering about it because he is a free agent after this year. You really got to decide who's going to be a first baseman of the future. If it's Pete Alonso, or is it that young kid Ryan Clifford that's in the minors who is playing pretty well in the farm system? Not saying that that's the case and that's the idea, but you do have to wonder if it's just not the pressure, not just the mental aspect of everything going around, the trade rumors or whatever, but maybe it's just a decline in talent, which is very concerning in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to sort of say that he isn't in his head and it's not the pressure kind of building up because I just take a look at the swings that he's taking right now. I mean, last year he hit 220 and he hit 40 plus bombs. Like, I'll take that all day long. Yes, you can compare that to Kyle Schwarber, and we all know what Kyle Schwarber got at the end of the day, right, with the Philadelphia Phillies, and that is way less than what Pete Alonso is going to command or has been commanding. But at the end of the day, if you're asking me if I take that power alone, like you just stated, yes, absolutely, I would. I'll take a season like last season from Pete Alonso all day long. Now, listen, he's still on track to hit home runs in the high 30s. He's still on track to hit that figure. I believe he's at 19 right now with just over 50 RBIs, if I'm not mistaken. He's hitting just below 240. So it's not like it's been a overwhelmingly horrible season for Pete Alonso. Let's give a little bit credit where credit's due. He hasn't been completely horrible, but I'm just saying with on par, right? The turnarounds that Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo had, we expect him to be on par with the rest of this core because we expect this core in its totality to carry this team. And that means Pete Alonso in a contract year, no less, has to be part of that equation. And he simply hasn't been on par with the rest of those, or at least those two guys in general, right? That are at the top of the order. Now, like I said, the swings that he's taking are the primary concern for me. And they are so bad that it just boils down to me. I don't think he's seeing the ball well, and I think he's guessing up there. I look at other guys' approaches, even a DJ Stewart, who we all know is absolutely horrendous. Let's call a spade here. No disrespect intended to DJ Stewart. He's not a good ball player. And everybody, right, that we just talked about in this lineup, we mentioned DJ Stewart first because we're like, why is he playing, especially after last night's loss? But the thing is that even with DJ Stewart, he has the capability to see balls out of the strike zone and not expand his strike zone for the better part. And that's why his on-base percentage, like Yeet is talking about in the chat here, is still on par with being absolutely fine, right? For major league ball player standards, even if he's not, his batting average doesn't show that. I'm just going to say this right now. If Pete Alonso starts walking and that's how he starts getting on base, he doesn't even need to put the ball over the fence, at least be productive enough to work counts and draw walks because he's swinging at uncompetitive pitches. And that's what's bothering me. And I don't really care because the power and everything else will come. But as soon as he gets that pitch recognition like down pat to what we've been seeing the last couple of years, I think the rest of the statistics will follow thereafter. But like I said, I don't think it's a talent gap with Pete Alonso. I'm not going to buy into the fact that he's all of a sudden declining in talent when he just put 40 plus balls over the fence last year. Right. And that's the thing, too, is like, what version of Pete Alonso are you willing to accept on this Mets team? Are you going to take the power only guy, like I just said, I would take 100% in a heartbeat? If he produces multiple seasons in, say, a hypothetical 8-year contract or 7-year contract that he may or may not get with the New York Mets, I'll take 5 or 6 years of 40-plus home run baseball, and you can hit 220 all you want. I'll take that. But the problem is that Pete Alonso, to me, and what he's shown in the first couple of years of his career prior to last year is much more than that at the plate. We know he possesses more than that at the plate. At one point, we were talking about him hitting 35, 40 home runs while also batting 270, 280, being a gap-to-gap power hitter. So, yes, there has been some decline, but I don't think that decline is large enough to constitute the struggles that he has been possessing and has been showing this season. I think that it's way more than just that, I guess, itty-bitty decline that we've seen, so to speak. And obviously, we can't measure that decline because that's not immeasurable in this world of so many advanced stats. I'm sure maybe there's an advanced stat out there somewhere with some sort of brainiac equation to measure that. But right now, I really do think it's beyond just the talent that's lacking. It's definitely in his head, and it might be just right there in his eyes because he can't really see what pitches are coming. It looks like he's just guessing out there, man. So listen, there's so many different reasons as to why we can come up as fans with what's wrong with Pete Alonso. At the end of the day, the best the Mets can do to mitigate this right now is moving him down the order. Hopefully he figures it out. Don't know if he needs a pair of glasses. I don't know what he needs. I don't want to make assumptions on based off of what he needs out there when he's on the field. But the bottom line is that the Mets are going to need him as long as he's in the Mets uniform. And we should all be rooting for his success until he's no longer a New York Met, whether he leaves in free agency or whether he leaves at this trade deadline. It doesn't matter. But I really do think that right now what's best for the team and what's best for Pete Alonso are hand in hand, him potentially moving down to 6th in the batting order. Now, I don't think 7th, 8th, 9th is obviously feasible. Like this is Pete Alonso at the end of the day, right? We're not asking for that. Maybe give him some better looks. Maybe put an Alvarez or potentially even a Mark Vientos, right, in that position, and let's see how he fares there. So that's kind of me backtracking on the take that I don't like all these lineup switches, this, that, and the other. But I think that when you see something that worked for Lindor and you see something that worked for Brandon Nimmo, at this point in the season, why not? Why not? So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with Pete Alonso. I don't want to make too many assumptions, but right now, I've said it a million times on this pregame show and the postgame show. The pitch recognition aspect for me is his biggest struggle, and that's what I'm going to pinpoint his overall struggles to.
Yeah, his pitch selection and his not knowing what pitch is coming or see the ball, hit the ball, it's just not there for him. And you're right. I would take 220 Pete Alonso, and I'm an average guy. I would take 220 Pete Alonso with hitting home runs every 5 to 10 at bats, or at least around 5 to 12 at bats, where it's a little bit more consistent. Because I mean, he only has 2 more home runs than Francisco Lindor. Like that's you're supposed to have about 15 more home runs than Francisco Lindor, at least 10. Like it's clearly a problem when you're close to Lindor and Nimmo in home runs when you're the power guy. Like that's the thing. Even when Pete Alonso in years past was struggling, he always was hitting those home runs still. He would still hit those home runs. He's just not anymore, well, at least right now. But, to get off the Pete Alonso topic, because we do have a game today at 4 o'clock, Luis Severino, right, hasn't pitched in about, 10, 11 days? So he's going to be very amped up. I'm still shocked he didn't pitch game 1 yesterday. Again, we can't change the fact that we lost. We might have lost anyway, even if Severino was on the mound. But what are you looking for from Severino today coming out of the first start in the second half? I think he's going to be fine. Now, you're probably going to see a little bit of rust, probably location-wise early on. You just hope it doesn't, completely fall off the wagon and, give up runs early. But the Mets have an opportunity here to put some runs on the board, unlike they did yesterday in the first inning, and give a lead to Severino so he gets a little comfortable in the game coming out of the gate for the second half, Chris. So what are your thoughts about Severino in the second half in today's game?
Yeah, I mean, I like Severino, right? I mean, he's got a 3.78 ERA. He's been kind of up and down in terms of the overall performances top to bottom. But I'll take what he's produced in that first half all year long if he can sort of contain that or I should say maintain that for the second half. So yeah, I'm confident in Luis Severino. I think that he's done a good job stepping up as the team's number one in Kodai Senga's absence, and I think that'll even help him even more when Kodai Senga is back on this roster and the pressure kind of lessens for Luis Severino. There's been some issues at times with Luis Severino regarding the walks. I think he's done a better job mitigating that. And I think his put away pitches have been that much better as well. There was concerns about him tipping pitches, but I do think his full range arsenal has gotten better and he's been able to command all of his pitches a lot better. And he's been, I guess, I don't know. I think that a lot of people like to sort of look at which catcher he does well with. But I think overall, both catchers have a nice little handle in terms of figuring out Luis Severino and figuring out how to call a ball game for him. Now, like I said, Luis Severino is the one calling the ball games, presumably one of the only Mets pitchers to do so because he likes to call his own pitches. But like I said, a lot of people are still, that I see on Mets Twitter or that do Mets, content, they're still a little bit wary of what Luis Severino has provided. Me personally, I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. I like the sample size that I've seen from him over the first couple of months of the season. And I think that him going into next season, I hate to bring this to next season in 2025 because we're here talking about tonight, but he would be a nice starting pitcher 3 or starting pitcher 4 for a good rotation with a couple of upgrades. So I like it. I'm confident in what he's going to be able to produce tonight. I believe he's coming off of a pretty good start last time out versus Washington in his last start of the first half. I believe he went 6+ innings pitched, a couple of earned runs, if I'm not mistaken, in a win against the Nationals in that sweep, that is. So I like Luis Severino. Like I said, I think that he's stepped up to the plate in a major way. No pun intended. And he's delivered exactly what this team has needed in the absence of Kodai Senga. Now, when you have Kodai Senga pitching 80 to 85 pitches in AAA, presumably as one of his last rehab starts, and he's on track, according to multiple reporters, to potentially make his first start of the season for the Mets in Atlanta in this upcoming series versus Atlanta, this rotation is in good shape. I will say that. Sean Manaea obviously didn't have it yesterday, but I think that you start to get a feel for most of these pitchers that have decent put away stuff. If they're not striking batters out early in the first couple of innings, it's kind of like you kind of get one of those feelings that it's going to be one of those games for them.
Yeah.
Sean Manaea last night had 1 strikeout in 5 innings. His put away pitches, the sweeper in particular, were not working for him. He had to rely a lot more on his fastball, and they were doing pretty good damage on it. So I like to watch not only the fastball command and the location, working up and down the zone in particular, because we all know a 95-mile-per-hour fastball from Luis Severino at the letters is going to be hard for anybody to hit, but also how that off-speed stuff is playing. I really hope that it plays better tonight than what Sean Manaea was able to produce yesterday. But at the end of the day, like I said, you get out there after the All-Star break as your first start, some jitters, maybe some rust. You don't know what these players are doing in terms of, I guess, outside of Sean Manaea, because we know that Hector's in the chat now, and Sean Manaea is playing catch with Hector during the All-Star break. But, Luis Severino, we don't know what he was doing. We don't know if he was throwing a bullpen or not, but like to see the command. A lot of people talk about this Marlins team as being one of the worst teams in the MLB, which is definitely true record-wise. But you take a look at their lineup as well. They have some very capable players, and I think a lot of people overlook their lineup sometimes, right? You talk about a Jazz Chisholm, who has had success in his career off of Luis Severino. Even Nick Fortes, who has absolutely killed the Mets in his career, who bats 9th for them. So there's some talent mixed there in between. Obviously, the Mets are the better team, but when you talk about the starting pitchers and the matchups against the Marlins lineup, it's a tough team to beat, and we've seen that. 4 of 7 games already belong to the Marlins in this series matchup between these two teams. So Luis Severino, I hope that he can provide exactly what he did in the first half, be that captain of the rotation, hold it down, and hopefully, we are all praying that something like last night in the first inning doesn't happen again tonight. The Mets need to give Luis Severino the lead early in this ball game and never look back, just like the Marlins did last night. So that's kind of what I'm projecting for Luis Severino. But all in all, if I had to just sort of tell you if I've been impressed with what Luis Severino has done in the first half, and if I'm convinced, that's the better word, am I convinced that he's going to keep it up in the second half? The answer is yes, absolutely, 100%.
I agree 100%. I think he will. Again, it's never been about talent with him. It's been about health. You keep him healthy, he's going to be fine. Now, is he going to have the performance of the first half? That's a wait and see. But I think he'll be pretty good for us. I think he'll be a solid number 2 for us once Sega comes back after his last rehab start in Syracuse. So, yeah, I agree. So what you're saying, Chris, is it's Hector's fault that Sean Manaea had a bad start yesterday. I mean, Hector was like, no, you got to throw the sweeper this way. And Sean was like, yeah, you're right, man. You're right. And then, Hector had him tell him, hey, subscribe to my channel. It's all Hector's fault, man. God, let the man pitch.
Hey, to Hector's defense, I will say he did state, and I'll take his word for it, that he did not have a conversation surrounding pitch grips with Sean Manaea. So we can assume the mechanics were not Hector's fault at all.
Was that an Andy Martino report or?
Yeah, it was straight from Andy Martino.
All right. Yeah, so guys, look, get a win today. Like, it would be nice if it's a laugher, right? I want a blowout game, so by the 5th inning, I could just sit back and relax until Ottavino comes back and makes it interesting again. But, I want a game where I could just kick back, relax a little bit. I'm off the next 2 days, so I'm kind of happy. I can actually stay up late. It's nice. I'll be with Chris in the post game, so I'm excited. I'm usually the idiot that's working overnight, so I can't do a lot of post games. But I'm excited about tonight because I think yesterday was just game 1 of the second half. I think it was a lot of rust. I honestly, you know what I think it was? I think the Mets might have been a little overconfident going into yesterday. It felt like that, like they were just going to show up, and win because the Marlins are bad, and that's a bad mentality to have. But it just seemed like coming out of the break, they were red hot. Confidence is sky high. It seemed like they walked in with their chins up high, and you know what? The Marlins got that one uppercut, and you couldn't get back up. That's the way it felt. And you just hope that they can just get back on the grind today, do their job, score some runs, and play Mets baseball that they played over the last 7 weeks. Because if they do that, maybe not to that level, but close enough to that, they're going to beat them. They're going to beat these bad teams. You just can't let it spiral, as Chris said earlier in the stream. You can't let it spiral out of control. You can't go on an extended losing streak. You can't lose 3 in a row. Specifically, you can't lose 3 in a row to the Marlins, because then you got to really salvage a road trip over the next 3 games. So come out, put some runs up early on the board. I believe the last time the Mets faced Munoz, they beat him up pretty good, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Rob. No, Rob. He pitched.
Really well.
It was a win for the Mets, but he went 6 innings of only 2-run baseball, so they did not hit him well whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stat line. Yeah, wow, I wasn't even close. Who the hell was I thinking of? Yeah, so look, get to him early. He's gonna all these young pitchers, they're wild. Stop swinging that shit out of the strike zone and wait for your pitch. Early in the count, fine. If you want to do that, like Chris likes a lot, just work the count. Just get your pitch. Stop swinging at the garbage. Pete Alonso, you know the good way to start this game? Take a walk. Like, it's not the end of the world. Show me, show Chris, show this chat, show Mets fans that you're seeing the ball. Because Nimmo and Lindor did the same exact thing. When they were really struggling, they slowly started to get their walks and take a lot more pitches and work the count. And then eventually they started to get pitches to hit and wait for their pitches, and they're a whole new player all of a sudden for the last handful of weeks, or more than a month and a half now. I want to see this from Pete Alonso and the rest of the team, because there was a lot of bad at-bats yesterday, not just scapegoating Pete Alonso here, because there was a lot of bad at-bats yesterday. Score early, please. Let's not make this interesting. We're better than them. I know it's baseball, but you got to just play the simple game of baseball. Sack flies. Get a base hit with a runner in scoring position. You don't need to hit a home run, because they were overswinging yesterday. I don't know if you noticed that, Chris. They seemed like they were overswinging a lot yesterday. Like they were just trying to hit that 3-run homer every time they got runners on base, instead of just hitting the ball in the gap and scoring 2. I don't know if maybe I was just paying attention to that.
Or just putting it in the air, like JD Martinez did for the Mets' second run. If they did that twice more, Pete Alonso in the first inning and Harrison Bader in the 8th inning, that would have been a tie ball game before the Marlins got that insurance run. So just put the ball in the damn air, get a sac fly for all we care. We just care about the runner coming in, right? It'd be nice to hit the gap. We understand that's not going to happen all the time. If you are a premier power hitter, if you are in the middle of the lineup, at least put the ball in the air deep enough for the guy to score from third base. That's all we are asking for. And I think that JD Martinez Martinez, who has struggled, is still a veteran hitter, and he came up in that situation with runners on the corners, less than 2 out, and he was able to get the job done, where Harrison Bader and Pete Alonso didn't get the job done, and that was the difference in the ball game. So it's not all about that. It's about execution, and execution doesn't mean finding green all the time in the outfield. It means just getting the runner in by any means necessary. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yep, productive outs. It goes a long way in this game. We've all played, we've all watched a ton of baseball. Productive outs still puts runs on the board, still puts your team in situations where you move the runner over to third with less than 2 outs. Now you can get a sac fly. Something like that. Even if it's a ground ball to the right side, they moved you over to third. It's productive. I need to see more of that from struggling bats in this lineup. And I need to see more consistent, good at bats with runners on base, specifically in runners in scoring position. You can't go 1 for 7 and expect to win a ball game, regardless of who you're playing. Because at the end of the day, they're still a major league team. Even though some might think they're not. They are. And Chris is right. This lineup is not as bad as everybody, assumes, because they're almost 30 games under 500. They got a solid lineup that could do damage. They swing a lot. They strike out a lot. They don't walk a lot. Severino's got to take full advantage of that today. Chris, final thoughts for today's game, and what else you got going with your channel besides the post game today?
Actually, one question for you, Rob, because I think that this was a very big surprise for me with the way that, first of all, with the first game being back in the second half, right, with the well-rested bullpen, and with the way that Sean Manaea was pitching for the first 4 innings. Obviously, he surrendered. The Mets came back a little bit, but then Sean Manaea surrendered that home run in the 5th inning, I believe, to Jake Berger. Were you surprised that Carlos Mendoza went back with Sean Manaea in that 5th inning? I believe he is still under 80 pitches, but you had a little bit more flexibility. And even with Sean Manaea going that extra inning, the Mets still used up, 3-4 relievers in the game. I believe it was Ottavino, Danny Young, Daniel Nunez. So maybe 3, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody. But regardless, that was kind of the one question that I had for you is, do you think the Mets tried to get too much out of Sean Manaea there, and it ended up costing them with the Jake Berger home run?
I think there might have been 2 explanations. One, since everybody hasn't pitched in the rotation for, about 5, 6, maybe even 7 days, I think he wanted to get his pitch count up. Let him work a little bit more. He's a veteran. You trust your veteran. I think that's the second explanation. I don't think it was just saving your bullpen because everybody was rested. You still use enough guys anyway. I think that he was like, all right, we kind of got a little bit closer in the ball game. Trust your veteran who's been good for you over the last couple of weeks. And you want to get his pitch count up. You don't want to take him out with 81 pitches, and then next start out, this is his second night pitching in almost 2 weeks. And when you need him to go 95 to 100 pitches, can he do that? Is he going to get in that fatigue situation? I think that could be the case. I think they wanted to, stretch out his arm a little bit more since he's been off for a decent number of days. And I think they're going to do this a lot with the starting pitching over this next week, everybody's first start, except for Christian Scott, who we know is on the pitch count and the innings limit. Everybody else, yeah, I know. I'm not happy with it either. But I think because they haven't pitched in a while, you got to stretch your arms out a little bit more because their next start, they need to go at least 90 plus easily, regardless of what's going on in the game, unless there's an injury. So I just think it was trusting your veteran and needing to get that pitch count up. I think that was the case since they haven't pitched.
I was going to take a different approach to that because I was kind of like shocked that they did that because for me, if you have a guy that hasn't pitched in a while, especially, with the All-Star break in between, if you want to throw him for 80 pitches just around, which was Sean Manaea was, that would actually be for me on the opposite end of things, right? From my perspective, the perfect time to throw to take him out of the ball game and trust in your well-rested bullpen because in the second time out, I believe he can get stretched out to 90 to 95. It's a nice little, bridge and a ascending pitch count for him coming back from that long break. So, I mean, you can look at it both ways. It doesn't really matter. And in the grand scheme of things, what's done is done. But I was kind of curious in terms of stretching him out, in terms of giving him that one extra inning and leaving him in the ball game when he was already getting smacked around pretty handily by that Marlins lineup. But that's neither here nor there. And 2, before I give my final thoughts, Are we just going to go this entire stream with Matt talking about Jeff McNeil, who single-handedly kept this team in the ballgame with 2 home runs and 3 RBIs? I mean, are we serious with how much backlash that he has faced? For me too, I'm not excluded in that category, so don't think that I'm trying to skirt my way around that blame game that I put on Jeff McNeil in the first half. I know it's only one game. I know this doesn't mean much in terms of him turning it around, quote unquote, in the second half, but it's a damn good start for him, and it's got to feel good for him. Hopefully, this could inspire some confidence for Jeff McNeil, because we always talk about Pete Alonso being one of the guys that needs to excel in the second half, that had a lousy first half for the Mets team to do better than what we saw in the first half, right, record-wise, and get into that playoff spot. But Jeff McNeil is the same sort of player in this core that could definitely boost this Mets lineup and in the bottom half of the lineup, right? We talk about Pete Alonso needing to step up in the top half. Jeff McNeil in the bottom half needed to step up, and he did so in a great way. I really hope that continues because, like I said, as long as you are a New York Met, regardless if I think the Mets should trade you or they shouldn't, if you are on this team, I'm going to root for you. And we all know Jeff McNeil is a professional hitter at the end of the day. We all have seen Jeff at his best, just like we've seen Pete Alonso at his best. So it's infuriating when they turn in these types of seasons so far because we expect better from guys that we've seen do it before. So great to see Jeff McNeil absolutely toasting 2 baseballs over the fence, 1 dead center field, just beyond the reach of Jazz Chisholm, and then a no-doubter to the pull side. I haven't seen Jeff McNeil swing that confident of a bat in a single game for a very long time like I did last night. So at the very minimum, if I'm taking any positives away, that's one I'll take away with Jeff McNeil.
Yeah, Jeff McNeil, I mean, what a game yesterday. And look, you said it. The bottom of the order could really use Jeff McNeil a little bit more, even though they've been really good this year. Put in Jeff McNeil and just at least showing more signs of the Jeff McNeil that put in hard contact on the ball is nice to see from him. And I said it in the group chat, Jeff McFly yesterday, making that catch to Robin a home run. And it seemed like everything it's the confidence with Jeff McNeil, right? He loses confidence very quickly in himself, in his ability, when it's still in there. Like it felt like it was all right. It's going to be a change of scenery. That's what he probably needs to get his mind off of whatever's going on in his head, revolving New York. It's just a new scene. That's probably what he needs. But if Jeff McNeil starts to get going, he's one of those, peas in the cod that we would really benefit a lot if this guy can bat 290 to 300 the rest of the way, because that's a guy, he does that. That's a guy that's constantly on base for your number 8, 9 hitter, and then the top of the order where you want to get on base, right? That's why the Mets have been successful during this 6-7 week stretch, because the bottom of the order, yes, they've been doing damage, but they also have been getting on base with walk, with good at bats, getting some base hits. They're on base for the Nimos, for the Lindoras, for the Martinez when he's hot. And that's why the Mets have been so successful. The bottom of the order don't have to be great. They just need to get on base for the big boys at the top of the order. If Jeff McNeil can be somewhat of what he was a few years ago and bat 290 to 300 the rest of the way, that's only going to help this team turn over the lineup to the big boys at the top, and they're going to produce at least the top 3. Alonso is still up in the air. I just don't trust him anymore. And it sucks to say, but man, Jeff McNeil, I tell you, I've always had an issue with Jeff McNeil for a while. I mean, I was on the Jeff McNeil get him out of here bandwagon for a while, even before I was killing and criticizing Pete Alonso. So look, I'm not rooting against Jeff McNeil. And Chris just said, I'm not rooting against anybody who's wearing a Mets jersey. I can't stand DJ Stewart. But I want him, at the very least, get 4 walks in a ball game, at the very least, because that's benefiting us, right? I root for the name on the front, not on the back. I don't care who's on this team. If you're winning, I like you. If you're playing well, I like you. If you're not, we'll criticize you, right? I think that's one thing that everybody knows about us, Chris, at least us. We criticize the hell out of everybody, regardless of base of the franchise or the 26 man on the roster. And you have to do that because why are we here if we're just going to be praising everybody? That wouldn't be a conversation. That would just be a waste of time. So Jeff McNeil, he's going to have another big game today. I feel like this guy's going to go on a run where he's going to go on, I'm not saying power-wise, but go on a run like a Martinez for 2-3 weeks carrying this team. Because Jeff McNeil, he might not be the big power guy, but he can carry a team. We've seen him just bludgeon pitchers when he was going well, and you just can't get him out. And it's frustrating to the pitcher. Long at bats, 9, 10 pitch at bats, getting on base, frustrating the pitcher. That's what Jeff McNeil is at his best, when he frustrates the pitcher and work the counts and put him bat to ball. He's limited his strikeouts over the last week. If he can do that, I think we're going to see a very successful Jeff McNeil in the second half, and that's only going to benefit the Mets, Chris.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said, we'll see what happens. Nothing's concrete. Like I said yesterday in the pregame, like, I don't know. I don't think anybody can really definitively say what the true identity of this Mets team is, right? And I'm going to keep saying it until I'm blue in the face. Like, we don't know what the true identity of this team is yet. We don't know the true identity of Pete Alonso and the season that he's going to have or continue to have. And same thing with Jeff McNeil. There's a lot of wild cards still to be figured out with this team. Again, no pun intended, because they're in the wild card race. But this is a team full of wild cards, so it fits the term that they are competing for a wild card, right? And we knew that it was going to be this type of season. Nobody should have been naive to that fact. We certainly weren't. We knew that the division wasn't going to be feasible. We knew it was wild card or bust, and that's exactly what it's turning out to be. So hopefully these guys can turn it around. No further comment from me. Like I said, I exhausted all my frustrations about last night on yesterday's post game. Like you said, if we came up here and it was all peaches and rainbows 24/7 about the Mets and not sort of openly talking about their flaws and their weaknesses, then it wouldn't be a Mets stream. We would be talking about, like, we'd probably be working for the New York Mets, right? Like, that's like, you hear all the time about them not talking bad, these reporters who work for the Mets not being able to say anything. I'm not saying that they're not able to say anything, but I'm just saying they shy away from it. Us, we've got no attachments. Nobody's paying us. We're doing this for free for everybody else's entertainment. So when somebody's not performing well up to expectations, obviously we give the benefit of the doubt. We know these players are not going to be perfect whatsoever, right? We're not expecting that, but we're expecting good processes more often than not to lead to those better results. Baseball is a hard game. We understand that. And we're all rooting for the guys with New York on the front of their jerseys. That's it. More so than the name that's on the back of the jerseys. And that's what a lot of fans also forget. So take it game by game, like Daniel's saying. We appreciate you all being here. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. You will get the rawest of takes from us and opinions about our New York Mets. We're not going to sugarcoat it for you, and we're always hoping to come out onto the post games like we're doing tonight after the game, talking about a victory instead of a loss. We'd much rather come up on here and make it be peaches and rainbows and talking about an absolute win and not having to criticize anybody. We'd much prefer that. But if it takes us criticizing some player, if it takes us criticizing the whole team, that's exactly what we're going to do. But all in all, the Mets have been playing great baseball. Let's not let last night get, put blinders onto that fact, right? They've been playing better baseball all in all ever since the beginning of June, and that's what matters the most. There's still 2 games over 500. And this is a great opportunity. It's a great night to get their 50th win of the season and get into that category and never look back. It starts here against the Marlins. It starts with Luis Severino. And it starts with this middle of the lineup who needs to keep on producing better at-bats and good at-bats. And the rest will be history. Let's go Mets. I appreciate everybody being a part of this stream. A lot of stuff happening on the channel when I can make stuff happen on the channel. A lot of vacations lined up. I apologize for being absent over the past week before yesterday. Mets postgame tonight. We'll probably be watching some Knicks Summer League action tonight. They're, I believe, in action at 6 p.m. as well. We'll probably be dropping an episode about our New York Knicks and some of the personnel that they now have on the team, some new faces, some Summer League guys that are impressing, like Mr. Tyler Kolek, who is their second-round pick. And we'll go about it that way. I appreciate you all. Hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll see you all after the game. Hopefully, catch you all on this weekend on the post.
Absolutely. So make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, guys. And listen, Atlanta and St. Louis is facing each other. Two teams on top of the Mets right now in the 1 and 2 wildcard spot. You win today, you're going to gain a game on somebody. And you can gain a couple of games on somebody, regardless of who wins or loses in that series. Because if you're winning, you're gaining ground on them two teams. The Mets win today, St. Louis loses, you're tied for the second wild card. If you win and Atlanta loses, you're 3 games away from the first wild card. So you're going to gain ground on these teams that are facing each other now. Prime chance for the Mets to get more ground on these teams, get a little bit more away from the teams behind you, and then we can be talking about series wins, wild card, trade deadline, all that fun stuff going forward, guys. So I want to thank you guys for watching another Amazing Mets pregame show right here on our channels. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you later for the post-game show. Enjoy the game. Let's go Mets, and we'll see you later today, guys. See you next time.
Let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because